Well, as a field staff, I'm really glad that we're trying to be more inclusive as the society and organization has progressed. I was just thinking how this program can make a really huge difference, especially with this profile, if they successfully completed the course. But having said that, as a field staff, I have some really big concerns about the safety aspect if we were to bring people who are unable to hear into the cave, knowing that it could sometimes get dangerous. Also, we only do a caving trip about once a year, and some of our staff have never even done one before. So not only that, our caving procedures have not been updated in years. I'm not even sure if we are still current and on top with the procedures, to be honest. Well, even though it's not a very challenging cave, but I think we're just increasing the risk since we are not very experienced with understanding the hazards and dealing with them at that activity site. So like I said, I would really love to work with the group of people if the caving policies and procedures are reviewed and updated so that we all know we are definitely current and on top of the procedures. And not only that, we can be more sure of what we could do if something were to happen, especially with the special profile of people we'll be working with potentially.
I'm a big supporter of inclusivity and getting as many people caving as possible, but there are two main reasons that I don't feel our organisation is set up to deliver this activity. Both of my concerns centre around communication. Firstly, communication with individuals. For example, if someone is walking off into a dangerous area, how do I communicate with them without being able to shout and tell them to not go over there? Secondly, how do we communicate in an emergency with the entire group? For example, if rain is falling in the area, the caves can start to flood. How do we safely communicate the evacuation plan to everybody if they're not able to hear our instructions? I would suggest that to counter these concerns, we run a staff trip to the location to fully scout out the location, the evacuation plan, the emergency meeting points, the flood points, and any tight spots, so that we can safely undertake the trip.
Hey, Kenny here, and I just wanted to give a couple of points and some feedback on the proposed caving trip with a group of deaf people. I'm not very happy about that. I wouldn't be too comfortable doing that, mostly because I don't really have the training, and none of our staff have the training to do that. We don't really know how to communicate in sign language, and if there's an emergency, we don't know how to communicate with their leader. So none of us are qualified or trained for that. I think I might consider it if we hire someone to come in and give us a couple of days training and get very specific and include that in our professional development, and then we might be prepared to lead it. But I'm really concerned what's going to happen if we have an emergency and we can't communicate with any of the participants. So those are my considerations, and I hope that those are taken into account. So in summary, these are our main concerns. We don't have training on how to work with deaf people. None of us know sign language or how to communicate with the interpreter in the event of any emergency. We're not really familiar with the emergency procedures for working with deaf people. That particular cave tends to flood sometimes, and we don't know how to communicate quickly if there is an emergency with the water levels or flooding. And we're not that experienced. We only do caving about once a year, and the procedures have not been updated in many years. So we need to take a look at all of that. Having said that, we would consider it if we have some training and we do a recce trip and check out the conditions, and then if they teach us how to work effectively with deaf people, and if we review the policies and procedures. But I'm afraid that's not going to happen quickly. It's going to take at least several months. So we need to take all of those factors into consideration before making a decision.